Curtis Calhoun here with MMA News, and my next guest has another big fight coming up. Dana White's Contender Series, August 29th. It's Mitch Ramirez. How's it going, Mitch?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, first things first, I mean, kind of just give me those first thoughts when you found out about this opportunity to get on Dana White's Contender Series. I know you've been through quite the whirlwind over the last year with the Ultimate Fighter falling through and all that, but to be on the doorsteps of making your dream come true, that's got to be really exciting.
Yeah, man. When I got the news, I was just really excited. Um, I've been trying to get on to, Contender Series now for a while. I've had a problem in my career just finding fights. I had a lot of fights fall through and a lot of long story short, just things, saw a lot of adversity and roadblocks that I couldn't really do anything about, which kept me from getting to this opportunity. And then, like you said, I got the opportunity with the Ultimate Fighter, and then that didn't pan out because of, all that stuff that went down. And to finally get it, to have it come back around full circle, I went and got another win after that Ultimate Fighter, and then to get the call within a few weeks of that, felt good. So been, really excited. It's been really cool having this much notice and everything. I mean, it's double-edged sword, of course, because, you got to think about it for so damn long, but it's been awesome, man. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that. Like, what's the experience like of having so much time to prepare? I think you got something like what 13 weeks notice or 12 weeks notice, something like that, to prepare for this fight. So how nice is that for you to have plenty of time to prepare and not have to worry about a quick turnaround?
It's been great because my whole career has been, I mean, I don't think I've ever had more than like 6 weeks of notice with an opponent. Maybe, it's always been like, even the fights that did happen, guy would fall out, pull out, they get another guy on 10 days or, a month's notice or something else. So, I feel like this one is nice because 13 weeks is how much time I had when they announced this. So, it's really given me time to start early and do things really, really well, not have to try to crunch things together, not be like, my last fight I had less than 2 weeks. I wasn't even healthy. I just jumped in. I was like, screw it. I got to get a win or these guys are going to overlook me again, and just jumped in there. So that was like the complete opposite of this. So, I'm really excited to go out there this time and, be in peak shape and really be in fight shape and really show, the world and Dana White and the matchmakers exactly what I'm capable of, and it's, I can come in on 2 weeks notice and kick somebody to death any day of the week, but give me 13, 12 weeks and watch what I can do.
Are you somebody that with this extra time is focusing more on, what you can control and your own skill set, or using that time to prepare for the specific opponent? Or kind of talk to me a little bit about having that extra time.
Yeah. I think it's both. I've never been much of like a big film study guy on people, a little bit here and there, but I feel like you never know what an opponent's going to do when you fight him. And at this stage in the game, all of us have developed so many skills that, a guy who might have been bad at this, in his last fight, he might be good at that now. So you don't really know. When I look at guys' film, I look at more of like, how tall are they, their reach, what do they like to do, what's their background, and then everything past that is all action plan to what I'm going to do to him. I don't spend a lot of time being like, oh, if he does this, I do that. No, it's I'm going to do this to him, and if he does that, I'll do this. Right, like kind of thing. It's like this is what I'm gonna implement my will on my opponent. So it's been really good to have the time to condition my body efficiently for the type of fight I want to fight, and to really get my skills and reactions and conditioning in order to be able to do exactly what I want to do on August 29th.
And do you feel like you're able to make those mid-fight adjustments a lot better, having that extra time to focus on yourself rather than worrying too much about watching film of your opponent and all that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that a lot of people make that mistake if they get so obsessed with, what this other person's going to do, their tendencies, the little things, and it's like when you're in front of somebody, it looks a lot different than when it's on camera too. That little tell you might be reading on a camera, you don't see that when you're right in front of them, things like that. So for me, yeah, I think that, just knowing that no matter where the fight goes, I can do anything. I can wrestle like a maniac for 15 minutes. I can bang and strike like a maniac for 15 minutes. I can mix it up I can do, being able to do whatever I feel in the moment. I've gone into fights before. It was like, God, I hope you don't wrestle because I'm sick, or I've had a bad weight cut, or so on and so forth, or I wasn't really prepared. Like in my last fight, I was like, dude, I was I was not in fight shape for that fight. And I remember going in there and like I was kind of planning on wrestling with the dude. And then but I realized, like, if I wrestle with this dude, I might gas out. So I better just strike with the striker and make it happen. And that's what I ended up doing. So, it's going to be fun to just be able to go out there and know that I can do exactly what I want to do. And it's not going to be an issue of conditioning or skill set or anything else. And just leave it all out there, man. I'm really excited just to, even for myself, I'm excited to see what I can do. I'm excited to see what I'm capable of. And that's really, the way I approach this game. And I think that's what makes me a little bit different is I can make those adjustments, and I'm trying to impress myself more than I am anybody else. I really want to leave that arena knowing that, I did, everything in my power, and know that no matter which way it pans out, that I am exactly who and where I'm supposed to be, and that's fighting. So.
And do you feel like, I got to ask you, like, with this fight specifically, granted everything that happened with the Ultimate Fighter and just kind of the crazy journey you've been on, do you feel like you have kind of a chip on your shoulder entering this one, like something to prove to those guys that, hey, like, you guys shouldn't have gotten rid of me on the tough roster and all that? Like, do you kind of enter with any sort of chip on your shoulder entering this fight?
Oh yeah, dude. Honestly, I think one thing that I do well is I take things personal in the right dose. I really do. That fuels my training. I think most of the great athletes we've ever heard of are very, don't just let that slide. It doesn't mean that you go get vocal and make a fool of yourself on a social media or an interview. It means that you get your ass to the gym and you train like you took it personal. And that's what I've done, and that's what I do. And losing that opportunity, as frustrating as it was, and with my post-fight interview in my last fight, they got a lot of traction online, and seeing all the support, but also all the doubt, and then even going into this fight, the guy's got a lot of experience, and I love that, dude. Like, I feel like I enjoy being the underdog. I love it. I when people give, I've been in fights that I was supposed to win, like, dude, you're gonna kill this guy, and like, didn't like the camp, was, you know what I mean? I just, like, I didn't even like enjoy the process that much, and even the win was kind of like, well, yeah, you should have done that, dude. Like, like, it's not that impressive, even to me, and that's what I said earlier about trying to impress myself, and that's like, I think the tallest task for me. I'm my biggest worst critic, but I'm also my biggest supporter. So, going into this, I definitely, when I got this one, it was like, hey, now you talk that shit, you said those things, so now we're going to be those. And that's exactly who I am. We're going to go show it. We're going to work hard, show up in the best shape of my life. I'm already there, and I'm going to go and put on a performance, man.
And I believe you're training at Syndicate MMA, right, in Vegas?
Yep.
What's that whole experience like? Because I know you moved from Utah to there, and obviously that had to be a crazy move. And obviously at Syndicate, you have so many training partners, right? And so many resources and all that. Like, talk to me a little bit about that and what the experience has been like.
It's been great. I moved to Syndicate to Las Vegas to train at Syndicate about a year and a half ago. So I've been out here for a while now, fought with these guys 2 times already, and going into my 3rd one with them. So, the reason I moved was because, I felt like in Utah, I had good coaching. I had, like, people who had some experience, people who have done these things, the guys that from Utah, your Court McGee and Steven Silers, and, my buddy Dane Aristizabal, who owns the GEMA, is with Court, and like all these guys out there, they're doing great things, and they still are. They've brought up a lot of amateur champions that haven't been in a gym a long time, and those are my people in Utah. And I've got a lot of resources in Utah, but what I didn't have was the depth of partners and the little details for the MMA. People, for instance, in my corner in John Wood, the guy has cornered hundreds of UFC fights probably at this point. Like, I mean, hundreds. That's crazy to think about, but having that level of experience next to you when you're even in the back, when you're going through these things, it's not new. This is what we do. Having them have that confidence, and you builds your confidence as well. So, even outside of the training partners, which is awesome, having the training partners, having the looks that I need while the experienced coaches are there watching, has just been it boosts confidence, but it builds skills. So it's been an awesome experience out there, man. I'm grateful to be where I'm at with them.
I got to ask you a little bit, like, how did you first get into MMA? Like, how did this all come about for you? I know you've had, kind of a crazy journey in your life. Talk to me a little bit about that, and, how you found MMA and where you are today.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we'll give a shortened version, but, I was just a troubled kid growing up, man. I'll just put it how it is. For whatever reason, I just found myself in a lot of trouble often. I was always on the, receiving end of some sort of discipline, I've ADD, all this, all that. And I come from a wrestling family, my grandpa and my uncle and all my cousins, they're all wrestlers. And, things like that. So I was made to wrestle as a little boy. I didn't even like it when I was a kid, to be honest with you. I just remember how stinky the room was, and like, I just remember being a little kid and like having these memories of just being tired and stinky and just like not really liking it. And I would tell them I don't want to do it, but they made me do it for a few years. And then I went and I played a lot of sports growing up, went to baseball, doing all this stuff. And then by the time I was like, junior high, I got back into wrestling and I wrestled a couple more seasons, and that was more enjoyable. I was a little bit older. I did like it. But I'd always been getting in fist fights my whole life. Like I'd always been getting in fist fights. I'd always been good at it. I'd always loved boxing, but there wasn't a boxing gym. None of my family members boxed. I always asked my dad, take me, let's box. But the boxing gym was like 2 hours away. It just wasn't realistic, So like I couldn't do that. And it was like a frustration to me. And then one day I went to a Blockbuster to, rent a weekend movie or something. And there was this, I'll never forget it. There's this one little cupboard, like it's not even a cupboard. It's like a little shelving set up, like probably 3 or 4 rows of DVDs, like 4 DVDs wide. And they were all Pride and UFC DVDs. And I remember being like, what is this? And like looking at it and thinking it was like pro wrestling. Right. And I remember I pulled it off and I looked at the back, and I remember like looking at the pictures and being like, are these guys actually fighting? And like reading the description and being like, you can fight like that? What? And I took it home and I watched it, and I remember watching it just being like, holy shit. And it was the first one I rented. It was I can't remember the UFC number. I should probably figure out the number so I can tell the story better, but it was GSP versus Matt Serra 2. Right. It was after GSP had lost to him, and came back. So I was just hooked after that, man. I started renting all the Prides and all the, and from that point forward, I was like, I want to do this. And lo and behold, there was a little MMA gym that had popped up within, 10 minutes of the house. And this was when I was about 14 years old. And I went in and I immediately fell in love. I got my ass beat. I was on the mat with guys that were all grown ups. I was the only kid in there at the time. I was just going to my classes and trying to learn this stuff. And that was kind of my introduction and where I fell in love with it. And I knew that I was good at it and I wanted to do it. But at the same time, I also started doing drugs at that same age. This was the time I started really going into that, counterculture bad lane, you'd call it, whatever you want to say. And so it was kind of a yin and yang thing where it was like, I knew I could do this, and I knew I was good at it, and I knew I liked it. But the lifestyle I was living, the people I was surrounding myself with were not conducive to that goal. And I kind of played, both those things. I wrestled in high school again because I wanted to be a better fighter, but I was still doing the drugs and I was still doing the things, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And, I was losing matches I shouldn't lose and getting in trouble with the law. And it was just this constant back and forth battle throughout my whole teenage years. And by the time I was, about 18, 19, I had a really bad drug habit. And I had kicked it. I finally, after like 2 years of being strung out, I had gotten it together, gone to rehab, and was kind of like, getting myself in order and getting healthy again. And I found MMA again. And I realized like, man, I really want to do this. I love this. I'm doing this. I'm finding a fight. And I started training and I started doing all the stuff I needed to do. I was about 19 years old. And then I fell flat on my face, man. I made a big mistake and I got arrested and I got put in prison for a long ass time. And that was kind of I think that was honestly the straw that broke the camel's back, but not in a sense like, yes, in a sense of like, I don't want to live this lifestyle anymore. This sucks. Like going to prison at 20 years old was really crazy. And it wasn't a life that I could see myself living. I'd rather die. Essentially, I was looking at these old guys and they're like, dude, I'll jump the tier before I got to be one of these guys. Like, I can't do this. And, but the fact that I got in so much trouble shut down so many doors for me. There's so many things that I thought I would do and jobs I wanted and thought I could do that were completely off the table now. And while that was heartbreaking to me at the time, it was also like a moment of like, the real thing I've always wanted to do was fight and fight pro, and to chase this dream and to be a world champion. That's something that I wanted to do since I was a little boy, but I was too afraid to, I guess. And I was almost too afraid to believe in myself or to really apply myself. Cause like, it's so hard. And like, you would put yourself at the whims of people's, opinions and it's just like, it's a night, it's a beast, to be honest with you, to be fighting in front of a lot of people, people are shitheads. You get a lot of good, you get a lot of bad, like I mentioned earlier. So it was like, I didn't want to, I was kind of like afraid to try. And when that happened to me, I realized, I don't have really any other option but to try this, because everything else that's still open to me, I don't want to do. Like, I don't want to work construction the rest of my life. I don't want to like I don't even want to run like a little shop. You know what I mean? I know this is what I'm supposed to do and this is what I'm going to do. So while it was like the most tragic moment of my life, it was probably also the most like the most clarifying moment of my life, because in that moment I went, fuck it. I don't have anything left to lose. I'm either gonna make it to the UFC or I'm gonna die trying. One way or another, I'm going to make something out of myself. And that was 2012, and I've never stopped since. I've been training with relentless ambition every day. Even when I was in there, man, I was relentlessly training my body every day, and I've never stopped, up until this point, now getting this opportunity. So, sometimes I go, man, I don't know how the fuck I got here. Like, to be honest with you, like there's days I wake up and I'm like, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I'm getting this opportunity and I did this thing. I did what I said, because I said I could do it, but I didn't know if I could do it. I just had to try. And like, to be here and to have done it and to be doing it and to be living this life and getting this opportunity is really cool, and a very, very humbling for me and myself, but also very motivating in the way that I hope to inspire others, because it's like, man, if I could do this, what else is it? What are other people doing? How else are other people shortchanging themselves? If you could just believe in yourself, what could you do too? With a guy with no prospects, 20 years old with a GED in prison, like nothing coming, so yeah, man, that's a long tangent, but yeah, man, that's kind of my thoughts on all of it. It's a beautiful thing.
I want to ask you a little bit about that, if you don't mind. Like when you were in prison, during those moments, you mentioned kind of clarity. You can go one way, you can go another way in your life. Like, what did you learn about yourself during those moments? Like, what was kind of the moment in that time in prison where you kind of, woke yourself up and said, hey, like this is the path I need to take, and if I want to, find success going forward.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had gone to rehab finally at like 19, and I mean, I was really, really strung out, dude. I was an IV heroin user. Like, I was a full blown like gutter junkie. Like, I was like, should have overdosed multiple times. Like, a lot of people have like, some issues and things like that, but like my shit was like critical. Like, I was homeless. I mean, I was really bad. So when I finally like stopped doing that, like that was the first spot where I was like, okay, I would rather die than live like that. Like I can't do that anymore. I can't do that to my family. I can't do that to myself. I've got to find a different path. And I was really trying hard to figure that path out. And while it was like, I kind of knew it was fighting, I was, like I said, I was afraid to really apply myself and try. And going to prison, like, I feel like, throughout my whole, youth, I got in trouble a lot as a teenager, but it was always like these small things, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you got caught doing this dumb thing or that dumb thing or this dumb thing. And it was like, okay, I go to jail for a month or I go to jail for a few weeks. And yeah, that's pretty bad for a lot of people, but I'm a pretty stubborn ass. So like, I was able to just be like, oh, no big deal. I'll still do what I'm going to do with my life. And then when that happened, it was like this final thing where it was like, I got this outside perspective on myself.
Yeah.
What everybody else was seeing. And it was like, oh shit, like that. Okay, this is why everybody's been freaking out on me for so many years, is because this is where you are. This is who you are. This is what you've made of yourself. And I was in a cell and I wasn't going home for a long time. I did about 3.5 years, but I could have done 8 to 10 easily. Like, it was like a really serious situation for me, and the outlook of my life. And that was the moment where I remember just hitting a point where I realized that I'm not that special. You don't get to break those types of rules, like human rules, and think you're going to just have a successful life. I wasn't born to money. I wasn't born to opportunity. I'm not going to fail forward, without any help, So, for me, it was just like looking around, like I mentioned, and seeing these old guys in there who had been me. I saw myself in them. This guy, was 55 years old and 3 baby mamas, and cussing them all out on the phone and telling them to put more money on his books so we can buy more shitty coffee and ramen noodles. It's like, and like, as a 20-year-old kid, to live that is one thing, but to live that as a 50, 60-year-old man is a whole different thing. And like, I just saw that, and I just like had this moment. I'll never forget it. I saw this guy on the phone abusively talking to his woman. and just being like, first of all, like kind of like, what a piece of shit, like hang up on his ass, and then also realizing like, oh shit, he was me 30 years ago. That was me 30 years ago. That's me in 30 years if I don't stop, and that was like a really sobering moment where I was like, I'll be goddamned if that's going to be me, dude. I don't care what I got to do. If I got to lock myself in the cell and not talk to anybody for 3-4 years, that's what I'm going to do. But I cannot do this anymore. And that was really that, and that came with a moment of clarity with the fighting and what I need to do with my life and what is going to be my path to be successful now that I've shut all these doors on me. And luckily for me, I'm a talented athlete. So it was like I'm a talented athlete physically, but I'm mentally a fighter. People talk about that a lot. I'm both, so it was like, I know I can do this, and now I just gotta do it. And it's taken years. I knew it wasn't going to be overnight. I knew it wasn't going to get out and jump right in the UFC. And I mean, I used to be in there and we used to get like Access TV. I'd watch all the LFA fights, or the old, back before they made the change, and the RFA fights. And I remember being like, okay, like first step amateur career, second step, I got to get into these shows. And if I can win on these shows, which I know I can get into the UFC. Like this is something I planned out when I was, in 2012. And that's what I did. I fought through, got out, fought that amateur career for a few years, went undefeated as an amateur, got into in my second pro fight, it was an LFA fight. I knocked the guy out with a head kick. You know what I mean? Like it was like I saw all these things started happening the way I saw them, and with a little bit of frustration and bumps along the road. Now we're here. We're at Contender Series. So it's like all those things I said are mapping out, and it's just been hard work. It's just been that realization, that moment of I can't do this anymore. I will not be that guy, and then just sticking to it doggedly.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's look ahead to this fight. Obviously, it's a huge opportunity on Contender Series. And last question for me, man. Granted, everything you've been through in your life, the mental strength and developing your fighting skills over the years, like what kind of fighter is UFC President Dana White going to see there on the 29th?
Going to see a dog, man. He's going to see a guy that fights like his life depends on it, because it does. A lot of these other guys, like it's fighting's their like job or this thing they do, or like, it's kind of like I won't say that about, I mean, it is your life. If you fight at this level, it is your life and it is your lifestyle. But I just have been around enough high level guys to see that there's a difference between me and them. I don't have another option. I don't have a backup plan. Like literally when I step in a cage, it is me fighting for my future. It's me fighting for the security of my life and the people I care about and my future children and all these things that are going to be in my future. When I look across that cage, dude, I see an invading enemy coming to my doorstep trying to take my things, and I will fight you to the bitter death for that. Whether it's, and that's just really, and I've been in a few of those fights like that, inside and outside of the cage, where I know I don't have that quit in me. And I'm willing to weather that storm. But to answer your question in a shorter way, Dana White and Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard are going to see a highly motivated, highly disciplined, highly conditioned wrecking ball of a fighter coming in there and showing them why they shouldn't have dropped me on The Ultimate Fighter.
Hell yeah, man. Well, hey, it was great to meet you. Great to chat with you. I always love having these conversations, and I can't wait to watch you fight the 29th. And I have a feeling this is probably going to be the first of many conversations moving forward, man. So I really do appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Curtis.